Hey everyone, it's so nice to be here with you. I'm so excited about this panel, and I'm so excited about talking with Van and Yuki about City Pop. And we are gonna go into that right away. But before I do that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Japanese American Service Committee, which is hosting this panel. And the Japanese American Service Committee was established in 1946 to assist Japanese Americans who had been interned and were not allowed to return to their homes on the West Coast. They face a great deal of discrimination in housing and employment, and the JSC was established to assist and help rebuild a community. Over the years, our community has evolved, as have the needs of our community. We continue to provide services for ever-changing communities, as well as classes in Japanese language for both children and adults, cooking, and a variety of cultural programs. We also have partnerships with Asian Improv Arts Midwest, which is the umbrella organization for Tsukasa Taiko and Shibukai Japanese classical dance. Also, if you appreciate this kind of programming and are able to, please consider making a donation to JSC. We'd like to keep as many of our community programs free or low cost as we can, and your donation will help make that possible. Over the duration of the stream, we will share with you several options and tools where you can place a donation. I am the Multimedia Coordinator at JSC, and I'm so excited about this panel and to introduce to you our panelists. So I'm going to tell you a little bio about Van Paugam and Yuki Tasaka. Van Paugam is originally from Miami Beach and currently based in Chicago. He specializes in 70s and 80s Japanese disco, funk, and city pop vinyl records. Having collected over 200 vintage Japanese records, Van emulates the nightlife of 1980s Tokyo with his DJ sets. Motivated by his love for Japanese culture, Van created the first city pop mix in 2016 on YouTube, has DJed in Tokyo, Paris, Miami, Brooklyn, and has hosted several city pop nights around Chicago, including Japanese festivals, anime conventions, and many sake lounges. Yuki Tasaka is a Grammy Award and Soul Train Award nominated experienced audio engineer from Chicago. He started his career assisting top engineers at various major recording studios in Chicago. He records, engineers, and mixes numerous major and independent artists for more than a decade. And not only is he an engineer, he is also a MIDI programmer, a musician, a producer, a sound designer, a live sound engineer, a DJ, and a teacher. And I am the person that did the documentary. So, Van, Yuki, join me on the stream and let's go ahead and start talking about City Pop.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
How's it going? It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this event. It's necessary in today's world, and I'm glad that we're able to get together and discuss it. I think it's an important time to do it.
I think so too. I wanted to tell people a little bit how we met because it kind of has to do with how we actually did the documentary. Like the three of us have known each other. I think it was since 2017, 2018, something like that, right?
Somewhere
So-
around that time. Mhm.
Yeah, something like that. And like many of you, I discovered Van on YouTube, like YouTube's algorithm, but then it was kind of like just city pop. And I actually found out by pure coincidence that he was in Chicago too. And I very randomly told him, "Hey, do you want to do a documentary about city pop together? Can we try to make this happen?" And he was like so nice and so cool about it. He was like, "Yes." And there's Yuki, and Yuki knows everyone in Chicago. He's so well connected.
True.
And then we went from that. It's so crazy, right? How like just we found each other online. It's fascinating.
Right. I guess that's when all three of us met together and we did Van and I did city pop related events a couple of times there. We also played at Japanese related festival together, and and I realized we also bump into each other at those events, right, Maria? When this like Japanese related event happens, it seems like we cross paths and do fun stuff together.
That's true. Japanese community is very small, and the Japanese music community is even smaller. So we all kind of intersect here and there.
Right. It's always a pleasure.
And I know we have a lot to discuss, and I have questions, and I know that everyone has questions. But before we do that, we wanted to share with you the documentary that we did together. So we're gonna be screening that, and after the screening, we'll come right back, and we're gonna answer all the questions you have, as well as the questions that I have about city pop, what it is, and what makes it so catchy. So we'll be right back.
Once police came to our area, the biggest city in the neighborhood, it was so special. So we saved money and then we went to concert. It was like a dream come true.
Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. You don't have to sell your body through the night.
I think it was the beginning of exposure to something beyond my Japanese culture.
When I first heard city pop, I immediately thought Michael Jackson. It was a perfect blend of disco and pop. I had no idea that it would get as big as it is right now, or that I would be doing this at all. I really didn't think that this would happen. Tonight I'm gonna be DJing at a bar in downtown Chicago. We're going to be doing a city pop night. I honestly never thought that it would get this big, or that I'd be DJing city pop anywhere in Chicago at all. When I first uploaded my mix, I had about 100 views, maybe less than that. I uploaded the first video because I just liked the music in general. I really didn't think anyone else was going to be interested in it. But it's something that I found interesting, and I really liked it, so I decided to go ahead and make a mix.
Wanted so to hold you. Ooh, you're so far from home.
City pop is interesting because it's a word that's been used more after the period than was used during the period. It's a sophisticated urban dance music, usually not terribly loud. I mean, it doesn't sound anything like punk or heavy metal. It's got a much softer sound. The lyrics tend to be fairly sophisticated. They're not simple I love you, you love me kinds of songs. They tend to talk about things like sadness, what it's like to feel alone in the city.
I can't wait till I lose this weary day in you and embrace, see your face. Don't be long, 'cause I can't wait.
It sounded so new, especially in the Japanese music scene. And I might have thought that some similarities to the Western culture or Western or American pop music, but I think it was more important back then to know that this was actually made and sung by a Japanese singer. That meant a lot, I guess, back then.
And it kind of became like a Tokyo specific, very much dream oriented lyrics, you know, costumes, And also the way they marketed the city pop, it moved away from that kind of art-centric idea. In many ways, metropolitan generic.
もっと強く求めてくれ冷えた体で雨の音さえ隠せぬ罪
Now we're talking about the love, we're talking about the joy, we're talking about the dream because it's a bubble economy. Young people had a good job. They were able to buy expensive car and pop in the city pop CD, drive around the, Tokyo highway.
In Japan, we had two huge bubbles in the 80s. How big was the housing bubble? The newspapers were writing that Japan, that is the size of California, the total value of its land is higher than the value of all the land in the United States.
For the first time, there was this sense that Japan might be the most advanced country on earth. And that changes the way you look at your own country. That changes the way you think about the culture of your own country. And so there was a confidence and an optimism.
This time of economic anxiety is not confined to the United States, of course. Even Japan, which has been on a long run of economic growth, now is struggling.
In the 80s, leading up to the 90s, the economy was doing very well, the bubble. And I think music reflects that. People are not necessarily living in the situation being sung in those songs, but at least it seems relevant in the sense that I may be able to lead that kind of life. When the bubble burst, that optimism is also gone, and people realize and face the harsh reality in which that's probably not going to happen.
Music then is a social phenomenon. People are out spending and they're very, very happy. They produce good music and everybody's getting excited. But how can you produce exciting music and tell people go, go, go when people are very poor or people lost their wealth? You can't be a credible musician singing about how wonderful it is to be rich when people lost their money.
Like everything else in the Japanese popular culture, outside of Japan has to be interested in it. Like American or European audience decided to do something about it, then the Japan will be interested.
There's also this real random factor to it. Why that song? Why her?
It sounds familiar, and even though it's from a different country and a different language, it still has a nostalgic value to it because it sounds similar to things that you grew up listening to, that your parents grew up listening to. You live memories of people from a different country that aren't your own. It's an interesting feeling.
I wonder, and I'm curious that those people who are listening to the music now, I wonder what appeals to them.
'Cause I really want to love you.
I think young generation do have a chance to listen to their music, and then good music is good music.
I think city pop's going to continue to evolve and grow. The more people hear it, I think it's going to continue to influence more musicians, more artists. It's going to take on a new life, I think. It's just going to continue to grow and evolve. I don't think it's going to die.
So that was the documentary that we collaborated together, Hisashiburi Citypop. It had been a while since I watched it, because we did it a while ago, and it's fascinating to me that even though we did it 3 years ago, there's still so much going on with city pop. And I wanted to ask you too, what is it about city pop that makes it so catchy? What is it about city pop that is like, makes people want to listen to it?
I think Yuki probably has a lot of insight.
Is almost like a parallel universe to the 80s music that we all love. When Plastic Love came out, that was a year Prince released Purple Rain, and and a lot of Queen was still around, a lot of music that kids love. Like the generation doesn't really matter. I know this because I work at high school. I work in an education world, and I know kids in 14 and 15, they love Michael Jackson, they love Queen, they love Footloose, they love like music from that era. People love Stranger Things. People love synthwave. People still love 8-bit video games. It's like something retro is it appeals to young generation, people who are like in tune with art and fashion. I think that's why Japanese um Japanese 80s music from the documentary that we just watched. We talked about Japan at one point. It was like one of the really richest country. That was a time Japan started to create synthesizers and drum machines that a lot of musicians like Michael Jackson and Prince used. And Japan was using the same time. Like if you know current Japanese music scene, it's really different from what's going on with American music scene. But in the 80s, there was a time, because from 70s to late 80s, there was a time the Japanese music genre and American music, European music was genres in line, and they progressed together because a lot of the hard synthesizers and drum machine was made from Japan, and Japanese people were learning. These instrument companies were learning what's going on in West, and and they Japanese people, Japanese musicians saw what they were doing with their instrument, and I think they got drawn to use it themselves too. So there was a time that Japanese music and European Western music was in line, and they were. I don't know, like it's like I said, it's like a parallel universe. I think that's why we all feel nostalgic when we listen to um in the city pop music, because like Van always say, it's like it's nostalgic, but like it's like from the world that you didn't grow up from. And yeah, I think this parallel universe kind of multiverse thing is I think that's attracting people to city pop. I mean, like musically, like I can show you my guitar really quick.
Please. I've been waiting for that since since you said that you were gonna play a little for us.
Do you guys hear that? I mean, like
Yeah.
just a quick example. I don't want to I digress. So but everybody's favorite tune, like Plastic Love. This funky groove. It's like Earth, Wind and Fire. I'm gonna play September by Earth, Wind and Fire, but it's just like like it has that disco-y, like nice feel, like same thing was like Yamashita Tatsuo's Sparkle. Oops, sorry. it's like the
Yeah.
music that people love. It's like Daft Punk. It's just like the groove that everybody in the world, it doesn't matter what nationality or race you are, like it's like the groove that everybody wants to shake their hips, basically. Like like
Like we were doing right now.
yeah, but like it's in different language. And going back to the whole bubble era, Japan had a lot of money, and Japan were they on the music production, they put a lot of money, like how American music would, like the budget that American music Michael Jackson would put in, like that's like people in Japan, like they don't spend as much money. Oh, same thing with America too, but like people don't spend as much money to make records now than back then. Like Yamashita Tatsuro-san, his first record, Circus Town, like they hired an orchestra and all the top musicians from United States. Like that kind of big budget level music was never created. Like maybe even after like city pop era, I don't think people put in that much like budget and then, like manpower, and like that's why like I think people love it, because you can hear that in the music. But like it's not the European Western music that everybody's familiar to. That's why I'm keep saying it's like a parallel universe or like a multiverse thing. It's like, oh, like it's familiar, but like it's not from our world.
Yeah.
I think that's like the big factor that like city pop is really
Yeah. And how did it, what happened that made it so popular online? Van, you found city pop and you started playing on YouTube, and it became huge because I followed you for a while, and I remember that your videos didn't, they started with good numbers, but then it just went crazy online. So what happened? Like what can you tell us from like from you basically just starting to play that on YouTube and watching it grow? How did it become so popular online?
That's an interesting story, because when I first started listening to it, I found a lot of this music through vaporwave and future funk remixes. So I mean, 'cause those were my two main genres before I got into city pop as a serious kind of career move. So back then, there was very little exposure to this music online, especially on YouTube. You could find individual tracks, but no one was kind of putting it together in a way that kind of flowed. So I had already been doing that with vaporwave and future funk, so I thought, let me try and see if I can find enough of this music to make it make sense in a 1 hour kind of context. And I was able to find more than enough music, and no one else was aware of a lot of this music, at least not in popular culture. And once they started hearing it, the similarities between our 80s music and the 80s music of Japan, it's a very accessible interpretation. A lot of jazzy elements that have fusion and prog rock and all these genres that we're already kind of are already in our cultural kind of subconscious. Our parents listened to it. This is music that it was on the radio, and a lot of people were old enough to maybe be in their parents' car or something, and they had the radio on. Michael Jackson was playing, Madonna was playing, Steely Dan, whoever. These are rhythms and kind of chord progressions and things that they sound similar to what was going on. So it was just a nice departure from what everyone had already known, without having to kind of revert back to our 80s and 70s. This is a new way for people to experience that era, free from the associations that their parents had with 70s and 80s music. It was easy to digest. People could listen to it. It's casual listening almost. It's not difficult to hear city pop.
I'm gonna take a look at some of the questions that people have sent us. And the first one is for Van. What's the relationship between city pop and online genres like vaporwave?
Well, vaporwave when it first started around 2010, a lot of it was sampled from city pop, and so all these artists were kind of digging up these city pop tracks and just general 80s and 70s J-pop and disco, and kind of slowing it down or speeding it up, side chaining it, throwing in effects, and this is how they were kind of infiltrating the scene by sneaking in these samples of 80s Japanese music where you don't really know. Back then, no one knew what it was because they weren't really advertising who they were sampling or the names of the actual tracks. It would kind of change it to something else. And so, Maria Takeuchi's Plastic Love was a huge, huge vaporwave and future funk kind of hit before it became a mainstream hit. And, that's where I kind of heard it too. And then when I've heard the actual track on Plastic Lovers YouTube, then I realized, hey, this is actually a singer, and she has this whole discography. So vaporwave and future funk kind of opened the door for city pop. It was like a
Mhm.
precursor to it.
I think to add to that, I think that always happens every generation in pop music. Like for example, hip hop music, old school boom bap hip hop music made awareness to younger generation about James Brown and Motown. American old school like R&B. Like it was really common to use in hip hop, from especially in like late 80s to like later 90s. Like it's really common to use jazz and funk music to sample, and like in later on the original genre gets popular. I think that kind of happened was vaporwave and city pop. Like people were using it for the aesthetics, for the production, for the beat that they're creating. And when people got curious, was where does this source material,
Yeah.
where is this coming from? And like and later that catches on. I think that this something like looking at music history seems like this is like something that happens time to time. Like
And this is a question from Maltos. I hope I pronounced that correctly. How big do you think is the influence of city pop on modern culture? So, video game music or contemporary music?
well, I think back in when there's actually a cool documentary on Red Bull Music Academy, the history of video games. Actually, if you guys are interested in watching it, like did you guys watch it? It's an awesome documentary. It's like 7 or maybe 8 episode, um,
Mhm.
uh, 15-minute long each like documentary, and it's really cool. But like video game music started to come around the 80s, that, and again, like this is like around the time when music brands like Yamaha, Core,
Mhm.
Roland started to create synthesizer. And like video game, like in the early days, Japan had a big influence, was like how it started, because it was the Japanese technology. Like you say, same thing with
Mhm.
like like Mario, Nintendo,
Yeah.
like PlayStation, like those were like those that was all cutting edge Japanese technology. And same
Mhm.
thing was going on with the synthesizers and drum machine world. So like it's like it's I think that's why it's there's like a little similarity to it. And also a lot of jazz musicians and like rock musician people who got hired to make video game music, because they were like a lot cheaper to hire a movie score composer. So like it went the right when the like famous, I forgot his name, like the guy who did all the Final Fantasy composition. He used to be in a rock band. So like a lot of
Oh.
a lot of video game companies were hiring like jazz musician, fusion musician, and rock musician, because it's a lot cheaper to hire them versus don't quote me on that, but like that's like one of the things that they were talking about in the Red Bull Music Academy. But like it's like I think that's why like the like video games and Japanese synthesizers and drum machines, those are like technology that came out around same time, and then it kind of grew together. Even though like
Mhm.
they didn't really have a like symbiotic relationship, but like they were somewhat connected, and they kind of grew together, I think.
Mhm. And I found this question was fun, and I know we're all gonna have different opinions on it. So, what's the all-time greatest city pop bass line? I am gonna say I love Tatsuro Yamashita's in "Someday" Itsuka. That one is so funky. I love it. What about you, Van? What about you, Yuki? What's your all-time greatest city pop bass line?
Baseline. Okay. Well, like
Yeah.
if you exclusively talking just about bass, I'm a bass player. So
Yeah.
like I'm pretty opinionated, but like if you didn't know, a lot of bass player loves slapping bass.
Yeah.
Like
Slap that bass.
slap that bass, like and like I think all time like I think that I don't know, like everybody have their own opinion, but like but like I always see this on YouTube because I want to learn city pop, so funky with like slap bass. But like I've noticed, "Merry Go Around" by Yamashita Tatsuro-san's bass. Like it's like it seems like a lot of bassists like to research and learn it. So like I have to go with "Merry Go Around" by Yamashita Tatsuro-san.
That
What
that
about you,
is
Van?
amazing. Yeah, you know what? I have to now that I think about it, I have to. As soon as that song starts, you just know what song it is, and that bass is just amazing. Yeah, it's an incredible song, and it's instantly recognizable, and it's a song that a lot of people love. So I would have to agree with Yuki on that.
We all chose Tatsuro Yamashita. I am not surprised. He's just so good.
Mhm.
And there is and yes, Toshiki Kawamatsu is also amazing as well. We actually Van actually put Toshiki Kawamatsu in the vinyl sample. So that's coming up. We're gonna play some city pop music because we cannot talk about city pop without playing some city pop. And Ron is asking, is there a place to listen to city pop? And he is new to it, so welcome. Join us. The more, the merrier. I would say, of course, Van. Van has so many samples, so many DJ sets on his SoundCloud page, and we posted a link in our comments. So I would totally recommend that first because that's how I started. I started with Van. But what else? What would you recommend, Van, for people to listen to city pop? Is there a place?
Oh, well, YouTube is still a really great resource for mixes. A lot of mixes are still up. It's all over the place. You could check on Mixcloud, SoundCloud. It's not restrained to just one platform anymore. In the past couple years, it's blown up and it's just everywhere now. It's so accessible, and a lot of these artists are on Spotify now. Like Henry's entire discography is on Spotify.
Otake-san too.
Yeah, so I mean, even on iTunes Music, so it's everywhere now.
The floodgate is open now.
The box is open and it's just all flying out. It's crazy.
It's so funny because when we did the documentary in 2018, I asked you the same question. I was like, what's going to happen? And I asked the question to everyone in the documentary. And I got, kind of like, it's popular. It's going to continue for a bit. But then, with popular things, it just dimmed down a little bit.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened. You were the only person that told me, it's going to stay, it's going to stick around, and, people are going to talk about it for a while. And you were completely right in that regard, which is crazy because because this is what Aoki-san said. Kind of was like, people in Japan don't understand what we find so fascinating about city pop. If you ask them about it, they just don't know. They don't see the correlation, and they also don't understand why it was Plastic Love, the song that made it for us. So that's fascinating for me in a sense. And there is another question, and this one is, I think this one is mostly for Yuki. He's our expert. Can you speak to the influence of Black American music via jazz, then rock and roll, and then pop on Japanese city pop? Are there city pop musicians who name this influence or pay tribute?
Well, that's a really big
It's
question.
a deep one. It's a deep one.
Yeah, well, there like there's no it's gonna be really there's no right a wrong answer to it. I guess, but like well, there is probably, but well, what the the I'll answer the first one. Like, well, what's
Yeah.
like the influence from like Black African music? Well, like because when Yamashita Tatsuro-san and Otake Eiichi-san. Well, like I think if you're like deep city pop fans, I think we all kind of know that city pop probably started with songs by a band called Sugar Babe, Yamashita Tatsuro-san's first band, released from Niagara Records. Niagara Records is a record label owned by Otake Eiichi-san, and Otake H-san was in a band called Happy Endo. It was Hosono Haruomi-san who became a bassist for Yellow Magic Orchestra. And Otake H-san was a famous record producer. He Yamashita Tatsuro-san was his like his student basically, and he learned a lot about production. They both loved uh, Motown. They loved Beach Boys. They loved Beatles. They loved records with a great music production. Back in that time, Japan was still behind with with a technology. Like Japan started to grow with from 80s, like the whole bubble era that from the documentary we just saw. But like before that, Japan wasn't cutting edge yet. But like Yamashita Tatsuro-san and Otake H-san was one of the pioneers to make the Japanese music production to the next level. And at that time, like I was saying earlier, Japanese music in 80s, later 70s, from mid 80s, they were really in line with what was going on in US. When Earth, Wind and Fire was popular, Japan was like, oh, like we should make our disco too. Like Takeuchi Maria's Plastic Love came out. Like I said it earlier, that's the time Prince's Purple Rain was
Yeah.
released, and like you can hear like sonic similarities with the drum sound and like this keyboard sound that they use and the funky, like we call it the chicken picking, but like the funky like guitar and slap bass. Like I saw somebody talking about Hosono-san and Larry Graham. Larry Graham is a bassist from Sly and Family Stone, and Hosono Haruomi-san is probably one of the early adapters using that slap funk technique in Japanese music world. So like I think like there was, I think in 80s especially, Japan had a big influence from American, especially American R&B, disco,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and jazz fusion, like Steely Dan or like Bee Gees,
Yeah.
yeah, like I think like they have a big influence, and you can hear that in that so
Yeah.
I'm not sure like I answered that question, but yes, definitely they have a
Yeah.
big influence from like
No,
Black
you did. You did. And
African.
this is something that I think a lot, like a lot of people don't. I didn't know it before I made the documentary, and that's one of the things that I loved you about doing it, is that I learned so much, and I talked to a lot of Japanese people that lived in Japan during the 70s and the 80s, and they all were telling me how in Japan they had commercials, concerts, TV shows, all with American, like UK celebrities and stars. Like for them, it was really like that in the documentary, that intro video segment of Roxanne. That was in Japan. That was live during that time, and so they were watching everything that had to do with American culture. So it kind of makes sense to me that they were using those same things that they were watching other bands, doing, to kind of create their own sound from that, like give it their own kind of like
Well, like
twist
the
to it.
funny story is like a lot of great bands that we all like, for example, Queen, they got popular in Japan first, and they got popular and elsewhere. Like that happened before. Um, like it's kind of like a music industry joke, but like you sometimes you watch like a music movie or something, and it's like the joke is, oh, like like you probably don't heard about this band, but they're actually popular in Japan. Like that's like it's kind of like a joke in like a music industry. Like you mentioned somebody's band,
Yeah.
but like but they don't know about it, and you would say, oh,
Yeah.
they're, oh, like they're big in
Yeah.
Japan. Like it's like it's almost like it's like a little joke that like Japanese people have like a better music culture.
And this is a question that I like for Van from Rurik. I see the connection between city pop with disco and synth pop, but I feel like city pop stands above the other genres. Why might that be?
Oh well, it just for me, I think when you're looking over the top city pop albums, it's a little bit of everything. You have some prog rock in there, you have adult contemporary, yacht rock, jazz fusion. I think, and don't quote me on this, but I believe a lot of it has to do with the Japanese sensibility for balancing different kinds of concepts at the same time, and that kind of ties into Shintoism and how they're able to kind of hold two different things at once and not kind of have to decide. So that's why a lot of these albums have multiple elements from all sorts of genres in them, and sometimes you'll have one like Tatsuya Yamashita for one, like it'll sound disco, it'll sound rock, it'll sound pop, it'll sound just about it'll run the spectrum of musical genres.
Yeah.
I think it's just Japanese people, and when I was in Japan, a lot of people did tell me this, that they have a lot of musical taste. Like they like all sorts of different things, and sometimes they don't just focus on one. They kind of just expand on a bunch of them, and I think that's kind of what ties this multi-genre element into city pop. That they were just good at everything, so they're just like, well, let's just do it all.
I see more questions, and we'll try to get to them, I promise. But I was thinking that while we do that, how about we start our sampling and we get to hear and listen to some awesome city pop songs. I think everyone will appreciate it. So let's go ahead and let's start playing it. And if we see a question that pops up that has to do with the sampling, we'll go ahead and answer it. But again, all your questions are fascinating, and this is something that we talk about so much. So it's actually kind of like nice. It's really nice to see all of you and discuss theories and such. And for this specific sample, Van, what's the theme? Tell us, because there's a theme to it.
Well, a lot of city pop had to do with the weekend, and it was a popular thing in Japan too. Everyone worked for the weekend, and so a lot of the themes were centered around weekend days. Like a lot of songs named after Friday, a lot of Saturday songs, and so the theme for this vinyl sample is the weekend. A lot of these are just weekend orientated songs. They sing about the weekend, going out on the weekend, partying, dancing, shopping, whatever whatever have you that's on the weekend. So I thought that I might, kind of add a little bit of nuance and put all these songs together for you. And I'm sure, as you can notice, it's not completely live. I'm a ganger. I still hope you appreciate the selections.
And you can listen to more of it on Van's SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and then Yuki made the intro. I remember someone saying like about it was so synth and fast. That was Yuki. That was Yuki's song. So
thank you.
Yeah. Yuki's an amazing.
Thank you for letting us use it.
Oh, no problem. Nobody would have heard it.
Momoko Kikuchi, she's still around. She's actually a professor now, I think. She has this huge discography of amazing synth.
She's also an actress too.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen clips of her like in little films and stuff like that. She was like an idol.
Right, right. She's like an idol. Like she like it's like one of those idol that would be in the TV show and like do stuff.
She, being an idol back then, I don't think idol and city pop were two really different things, but she was like the only one to have a lot of crossover. And to this day, like her albums are, some of her albums are like considered peak city pop. There's been repressings of her albums in the West and stuff, so she definitely has an interesting flavor of city pop. A lot of people appreciate it.
I just vibe into this. I'm like,
the live video for this is amazing. I suggest you look up Blind Curve on YouTube and look up the live video because it's really cool.
So like I was like looking at her Wikipedia, but it seems like she was kind of like groomed to become like an idol. Like it was like a pretty big project back then. It was a label that she was part of, which is kind of interesting because even Matsubara Miki, like a lot of city pop artists are that we all love. They all come from jazz. They're trained musicians actually. I mean, like that's how it is. Like even in the United States, a lot of musicians played behind Michael Jackson and famous singers. They're all like master of their instrument, and like like Momoko Kichi is one of the iconic name that you hear in the city pop, but like she's kind of unique in that sense because a lot of city pop artists, they are like real musician. I mean, like I'm not saying she's not a real musician, but she was like kind of trained to become like the idol. Like early TV era media. Like it was like really the way she came up was like really strategic and it worked.
Yeah.
Like both idols like groomed before they were like released. I think that was like a whole big thing. But like the industry grooms all these idol stars. And,
right.
Like, I mean, like packaged products.
Right.
But she was actually pretty talented. She plays the keyboard and like, she does the synthesizer work.
Right. Like she's like the multi talent, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And she's a professor now.
Right.
So, wow.
Like when she came out, she was an image girl for this like Idol magazine. Apparently, that's like the beginning of her career, and from there, like she was she was like a heroine in some movie, and later she became a singer, and like you said, like now she's a professor. So like she knows her way to like survive.
She knows her stuff.
Yeah, she knows her stuff.
She knows her stuff.
Right.
With her real name though. Momoko means peach girl.
I love this song.
The Toshiki Karamatsu.
We were talking about the Toshiki Karamatsu. Here he is.
I mean, he's an amazing artist for sure. I mean, he still does live concerts today, and he's still on stage just killing it with the guitar and like just like whatever. I mean, this is that's a craft and it's timeless music and you can hear it. I mean, he has a really good ear for bass, especially he's from everything behind.
A lot of them still perform. Like a lot of the city pop artists, like I know that Tsuro Yamashita. I mean, this was a while ago, but he did the soundtrack for that movie, Mirai.
Yeah. Like Hosoda Mamoru's movie, he always contributes for the ending song or opening song. Well, like oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say that song has. When I listened to it, I was like, this is very city popish in a way, like the beat to it. I could be wrong, but that's kind of like how it sounded to me. What do you think?
Like city pop artists to me, they all seem like jazz musician over here. Like God rest his soul. Like Chick Korea. Like I kind of like a lot of like musicians, city pop musicians. Starting was Amaki Tatsuro-san. Like he only does like small clubs, like jazz clubs, and he doesn't really do like a big arenas or anything. A lot of like city pop, like again, like they all come from like a train. They all have a trained background, and they so like so there's something to be said about playing music in an intimate situation. Playing music at the jazz club. Somebody was saying earlier, like how city pop superior from like synthwave. It's just like this is all musicians, like these horn players, like synthwave music, and like a lot of underground music, synthwave, lo-fi hip hop. Those music, it's usually music made by a kid in a music like in their bedroom with their laptop, and it was like keyboard like this, like that's how they make music. But like like the city pop, like again, like the bubble era, like they were like great musicians, and like people had budget to put together this awesome record. So like in that sense, like why the city pop superior to like the synth music and like stuff that people are like I don't want to say like which music is better, but like there are more work put into this genre. Like the people learned this music, how to perform it. They all went to recording studio. They had recording engineer putting microphone up, hitting tape, record on a tape machine. Guy operating a mixing board. Like it's like more work are put into these music. Like I'm not saying it's better. Like better is subjective, but like but it's like an old Hollywood movie or like old Disney movie. People actually drew those things. Like, and now these days you can computer generate stuff, and you can like save a lot of time to create a product. But like back then, like the people actually have to perform these instruments and actually rehearse. So like I think that those like a lot more people working in a project that becomes like the detail. Like that makes it more interesting versus like the music that it's made by one person.
And there's this question that I found interesting was, are you still trying to find undiscovered city pop artist songs, and is there a great album you discovered recently?
Oh yeah, I'm always looking for new artists. Believe me, there are still so many more that we've discovered, and they're probably sitting in a crate somewhere in Osaka or Kyoto in some record shop in the back, and like no one even knows it exists. It's just waiting to be discovered, and like similar to kind of like how Takako Mamiya, she had that one album called Love Trip, and she disappeared completely. And to this day, no one knows where she is or what happened to her. But she just had this one record that if someone hadn't saved that record, it would have been lost to time. So I'm sure there's more Takako Mamiya kind of stuff out there, like undiscovered artists, and there's always someone to find for sure. There's more to discover in the musical genre. And one that I'm listening to right now is there's actually it's called Shampoo, and it's by I believe Rico. I forgot the name only because I just got the record. Usually I just buy the record after hearing just a couple tracks, but I'm gonna share it in the chat before we're done here, so you can see what I'm talking about.
You know what? Lately my trend has been like, I found that a lot of I guess a lot of Japanese artists, they do Christmas songs, and a lot of city pop artists have made Christmas songs, and they all sound very city popish. So it's kind of like Christmas and city pop together.
It's a jingle bell sound.
Yes,
the city pop sound was a jingle bell.
I know. So the one that I'm listening to right now that I definitely recommend if you like Christmas and you like city pop, you have to listen to Junichi Inagaki. It's Christmas Carol. That's the song. It's like Christmas Carol, and then it's like so Christmassy. You have no idea, and it's city pop together. I'm just like obsessed.
Not Christmas in July or something like that.
Oh, I start taking pictures in November, like the
You
moment
put
the
your
trees
tree
go
up.
up. I make it a mission. I'm like, I'm gonna take pictures with as many Christmas trees as I can. Because, and I start in November when they put the trees up, you know.
Right after Thanksgiving, no. This is such an amazing song. Anytime I DJ live, when I used to, people would always ask me this song, only because it's an iconic city pop song. Yeah, Friday Chinatown by Yasuo.
Yeah.
This is like one of her only songs that I like, but it does more than enough to put out for the rest of the discography. Classic song.
I love this song so much, and it's using a lot of vaporwave samples that are very popular.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because it's literally the same beat. Everything is the same. It's just this little sample of Fly Day Chinatown, you know?
Right, yeah.
Miki says, I feel as if the concept of city pop to be more so comfortable enjoyment after decades of recovery, if anyone feels the same.
Yeah, I think that's already. Even listening to it now after what happened in 2020 is like kind of refreshing. It's almost like a little bit more optimistic than last year, because listening to it last year is probably how Japanese people felt. You know, in 1990 when the economy was collapsing and everything, you know, was going really badly. A lot of the reason why city pop disappeared was because it didn't fit the mood, the contemporary mood going into the 90s because of the bubble economy that popped. So it almost kind of mirrors what happened back then at the start of the 90s. At the start of our 2020s, you know, the virus happened and city pop kind of declined a little bit, but now it's picking back up a little bit. So city pop lived through two huge, world events. This is a classic summer theme song.
That's Yamashita-san. It's like, you know, it's kind of like I know it's no coincidence, but it's like Maria Takeuchi and Tatsuro Yamashita, they're married, you know, the king and the queen of city pop, and it's fascinating in a way because it's kind of like what you said, what the two of you said, that in that time it was all about everyone was collaborating with each other and they all came from the same, background, and I know that, before city pop, Tatsuro Yamashita and many other of the figures of city pop were in bands. And they were doing, like a similar style, but not exactly city pop back then, right?
It makes sense, like, that after Plastic Love, the Yamashita Tatsuro's music gets really popular in the city pop community because he was producing Plastic Love. He had a big part of her music production, so like it only makes sense that after Plastic Love, his music gets discovered and gets popular. Gets popular. Like I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like a podcast where we talk about all this. If anyone's interested, called Mayonaka Hour.
Yeah, Mayonaka Hour. Check it out.
Yeah, please do. The two of them, we just been talking about it, other stuff. But Yuki and Ben, they have a panel. They have a podcast, and they discuss everything city pop. So please go ahead and check it out. They have 3 episodes, right?
Yeah, we have one coming up soon. Mickey Mouse So
So the plan is next week, Van is gonna have a vacation, and when he comes back, we're gonna start like to try to do this consistently. We both of us, we have our own projects.
Yeah.
And we've been kind of busy. Well, we never lost communication. We haven't made an episode for a little while. We haven't made any episode for a little while, but we're always communicating. And we were planning things. We got together one time and talked about what we want to do in the future, and we want to be a little bit more active. And hopefully we can see people in a close future, because this has to we can only have so much of this COVID thing, and I don't want to really incite people to go outside.
Yeah.
But I feel it's not gonna. I feel it's not a too far future. I think I have a feeling that we can get together. Things are starting to get optimistic, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true. This is the last song of the sample, where Van brilliantly chose to finish things off with Plastic Love by Maria Takeuchi. And again, thank you so much for joining us and just geeking out with us about city pop. As you can see there, if you don't stop us, we won't stop talking about it. And make sure that you check our social media. We'll be dropping links to Yuki and Van's social media as well, so you can check things out. We're gonna also share with you information about their podcast so that you can check it out as well. And again, if this is your first time here, hearing about JASC, check our website out, because we have similar programs like this. So it would be great to see you again if you came because of Citypop.
helping and supporting me, and I see a lot of people who are constantly supporting the scene, and I can't thank everyone enough for all the support. In Chicago, just everyone has been so supportive of me, and I can't thank everyone enough. It's been amazing. Of course, Maria, thank you so much for putting this documentary together and doing this panel. It's important that we try and promote positive Asian culture, especially in today's world. It's something that's necessary.
I know, and it's so great that we met because of music. We found it through different ways, and then we connected in a way that we created something that it wasn't done before in our own way. You have been featured in so many articles talking about city pop, and it's fascinating to me that there are still stories to tell. So who knows? Maybe when we can all meet again, we'll be able to just go jam at the Sake Lounge and just have a city pop party. So
we should definitely do some event. If we can, do it. Seems like we can draw certain. If we can draw a certain number of people, maybe it's something we can do, in the future again.
Oh,
I know, right?
Once people are ready to go out again and things are open, it's gonna be free for all. Everyone's gonna want to go out, and all the free parties, no matter what day, is gonna be busy. I can guarantee you. So we're doing this live one day.
Yeah, and this has been fascinating. It's that if you're here in Chicago, and I think it's also this happens in New York and in LA, so you can find places where city pop is being played, live, like DJ sets. And I'm curious about that. Why these big cities?
I mean, it's city pop. It's in the name, right?
Yeah.
I want to start to see bands perform city pop music.
Yeah, live bands are doing it a lot.
Yeah, me and Jun from Murasaki Sake Lounge, we tried to do it, but it didn't really work out. But I see a lot of YouTube people covering city pop songs,
Yeah.
like even American people, like
Yeah.
like
I think-
American people or like people from Europe or like other nationalities. Like it's really interesting to see many people cover. I've seen a lot of Korean musicians cover city pop, so like it will be cool to like see people perform. I can see city pop getting performed at jazz club, like again, like Yamashita Tatsuro-san, and they kind of play at those tiny jazz clubs in Japan, so it's a good music to play at the small cocktail bars or something.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure I'll see everyone somewhere eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it'll happen. We just have to be patient and, wear a mask, stay safe, keep distance. And again, thank you, Yuki. Thank you, Van, for
Thank you.
joining
Thank
you,
us.
Van.
It was super fun.
It was really fun.
And the documentary is on YouTube if you want to check it out again, want to see, I guess, the same thing again. But thank you for coming, and we'll be seeing you next time. So again, have a nice weekend. I hope that you go and have fun in a safe way, please. So thank you.
Guys, take care. Have a safe night.
Good night.